discuss this crucial topic. And now I hand over the mic to the chair, Professor Santosh Kumar.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for introducing the panel. So I will not take much time in introducing the panel. Already you have introduced. Since the topic is very complex and we need to understand this in 45 minutes, precisely that we have 3 panelists and they all will throw their experiences that how the governance of the humanitarian crisis to be taken up. We all aware in the morning session it was deliberated very extensively that how the disaster management system came into existence in the country, especially after the advent of the National Disaster Management Act 2005. Prior to that, only the relief governance was there, and that too was governed by the British manual developed by the Britishers that was called Relief Manual. Over the period, after this Gujarat earthquake, the transition took place, and that transition started into act and institutions, policy, and then programs. And that's how the governance is evolving. In the government sector, it is there, the National Disaster Management Act is there, which directs every section of the society, because act is for everyone. So that is one. And that act precisely leading to the ex ante governance of disasters. One is the pre-disaster and the during disaster and the post-disaster. So post-disaster, this has largely been search and rescue and response. Immediate relief, that's all. But over the years, now the focus has been changed globally and also that in India as well. So globally in 2015, we say as a kind of a dent, and that dent came into 3 forms of international convention. And that international convention, which India is also one of the signatories. The first convention is called the Sendai Framework. That happened in Japan in 2015. That was for the disaster risk reduction. The second global convention happened on climate change adaptation, that CCA we call. And the third was the SDG, Sustainable Development Goal. All the conventions signed and all the conventions, India is the signatories of all of that. So the governance at the national level and also at the state level and the local level. So this particular act gave the insight that how disaster management should be governed in India as an independent India, you can say. And there peoples came as a kind of in the whole of the center or the nucleus of the planning. And be it private sector, be it corporate or the PSUs or be it the government. So all gets governed by the Disaster Management Act. And over the years, you must have realized also that it's also leading to the corporate governance, which is talking about that CSR responsibility to the disaster management, which got included 2 years ago. Now, one is that we are talking about governance as a post-disaster in terms of one, as a response. But ex ante, pre-disaster planning that to be done by entire development sector. If you see that many of the examples which we have, and that example we have from India, from US, from Thailand, from Laos, from Vietnam, any parts of the world you have seen that many of the supply chain breaks after the disasters and huge crises happened, especially COVID-19, which everyone has experienced and they have seen the implications, especially the social and economic implication other than the human tragedy. So the idea is to look at that how that go into deep as a kind of a building resilience of the nation. And that building resilience is that it's just not CSR will do, or maybe we need to address that our own. The serious disruption of supply chain happened in most of the disasters, like say Japan earthquake happened. And after that cascading model that Mr. Sanjay Srivastava was telling, that one disaster after another. So earthquake happened, converted into tsunami. Tsunami got converted into flooding, and flooding got into this total energy disruption, and then whole blackout as a nuclear emergency. So there, 10 days, the whole of Japan was there when the Daiichi Chokyo was the kind of a power company. where in Japan 99% of the power supply is coming from the nuclear energy, and it's also privatized. So what kind of implications and challenges happened? Government of Japan brought this policy that the governance should change, and then people were coming on the kind of a street and saying that no private business in power sector, and they wanted to close this down. So this kind of a hue and cry happened, although the Japanese government went on the negotiations and found the solution. But the idea which I'm trying to make is this, that the whole of disaster risk governance is changing its profile, changing its total kind of a landscape. And in this landscape, how our corporates, how our private sector and the small traders. I was traveling to Sikkim last week, and there we found that along the rivers, many of the small traders who were living and surviving, they are not there. Same way happened in Himachal when we visited for damage and loss assessment. We found large number of small traders and businessmen also got affected seriously in terms of the disaster supply chain and also in terms of damage to the property. So all these happening across the globe, and we are seeing also in India. So how we look at in the new paradigm, which we say new paradigm in disaster risk governance, where that corporate can actually show the kind of a new light or new path as a kind of a partner, that how government, private sector, corporates and the small traders can be taken care of and then also provide the lead. So we have that panelist with us who is dealing with corporates, who is dealing with the private sector and security, and also we are dealing with the international cooperation, that is the World Bank. So I would request them to reflect upon in this changing paradigm or in these complexities or of these challenges, where all the speakers before us have highlighted that these are going to be the challenges of the future. So how we position ourselves and how we build the narratives so that we can take up this as a kind of a making India resilient. There was a reference of G20 as well. So G20 on India's initiative had this inclusion of disaster management subject, that discipline to be discussed in the G20, and all the group members agreed. We are also part of that discussion which happened across the country in the different deliberations. So now at this point of time, I would reflect first to Gopal Chaudhary ji, getting totally involved into the security issues and also the corporate governance, seeing it very closely, that what kind of challenges and complexities which he thinks in drafting the roadmap for the future. Gopal ji.
Thank you, Santosh ji. Hope I am audible in the back. Thank you. So as we have heard today in the proceedings, we heard Dr. Bhatt, Mr. Bhatt talking about how he transformed the entire Himalayan range areas in our part by starting that Chipko Andolan and all other, environmental development movement that led to prevention of flooding of a couple of villages. Recently, we celebrated the way rescue of all the people in that tunnel happened in Uttarakhand. A great job done by Government of India, unheard of. But that was a response. A question that came to my mind is that the organization that was building the tunnel, were they prepared? Did they carry out the risk assessment? Were they ready to deal with this? We heard Mr. Lieutenant General Atta Hasnan telling us that the entire might of the government was put to rescue those workers, and a great job done. Salute to them. But what about the preparedness? What about the risk mitigation measures planned before people entered inside the tunnel? So when we see disaster management, response comes in the last. First is risk assessment. Then we decide early warning indicators. Then we decide preparedness. Then we say awareness. then we say mock drill, and then we say all that when fails, you respond. And response also has to have as per the contingency plan. This is what I have learned in disaster management 25 years ago. Problem is that we do not take the previous aspects very seriously. I remember in one incident that a police officer of a district was made a hero because he busted a gang of rapists in 24 hours. But nobody asked him that he was the superintendent of police of district since last 18 months. And there were several complaints in the news prior to that gang rape that criminals are teasing the girls, they are making attempts, but he didn't take any precaution. But he became a hero because he responded. So we have to change that mindset when we talk about disaster management. I remember in 2013, when I joined Tata Steel, and understand that all the manufacturing companies where you deal with lot of chemicals, gases, fire, electricity, where you have many processes which may go wrong, may lead to large scale fatality, you need to be prepared. I met the NDMA, the then NDMA, member chemical. He supported me, and we then started working with National Disaster Response Force from 2016 onwards. And what did we do? We said that maximum fatality happens during the golden hour, 1 hour immediately after the accident. Are we prepared to deal with that? Should we wait for the doctors to come if there is a large number of casualties? Should we expect NDRF to reach within the golden hour? They would come from Patna. It would take 8 hours to reach to Jamshedpur. What do we do to save lives? And then the then DG NDRF, Mr. Prakash Singh, we met him and we said that, can you help us? It is one of your charter of responsibilities to train the industry, train the people, train the community. And then we started that journey. And when I left Tata Steel in 2022, we had trained 10,000 people on the shop floor as emergency response team members. And how did we do that? We requested NDRF to develop a syllabus on 4 aspects of disaster management: medical first response, collapse, search and rescue, awareness on chemical and gas disaster and how exactly to mitigate that, and fire management. 10 days training program, out of which 4.5 is classroom and 5.5 is basically the practical. They used to come with 2 truck loads of equipment, 20 people. They would train our engineers, our doctors to work during the golden hour, during the emergency management. And those master trainers, after they are certified by the NDRF, started training the people at the shop floor. And what did we get out of that? I remember several incidents where these master trainers and emergency response team members, since they were taught how to give CPR on a mannequin, they saved lives at the shop floor. People had a heart attack. Before the ambulance could come, they revived him by giving CPR. A person narrated his story that he was traveling in the train and a doctor got a heart attack and his wife was crying, and he provided the CPR, and that doctor could get revived and got the medical treatment at the next station. Similarly, they were trained on managing the fire, and you all are aware that in the chemical fire, even in your household fire where a lot of things are plastic, a lot of things are flammable, if you delay the management of fire for 10 minutes, it guts the entire house. It guts the entire shop floor. So those initial 10 minutes are very important, and generally it takes 10 to 30 minutes for a fire tender to come to you. And we have seen 3 incidents in Tata Steel itself where before fire tender arrived at a scene which could have turned into a conflagration, they managed the fire with the help of fire hydrants and fire hose and fire extinguisher because they were trained by NDRF and others. So when we talk about preparedness, this is very, very important, that instead of going into several other aspects of the preparedness, we first have somebody to manage the golden hour, save the lives, save the property. Before fire tender comes and manages the, fire, and that guts the entire assets and machine, somebody can make use of the fire extinguisher, can use the hydrant and douse the fire. That is very, very important. And here, I think NDRF and all other organizations can play a big role. Even IISSM has a plan to play a role in building the capacity of the industry to manage that golden hour, manage the emergency during the disaster. We all talk about this. We have a paucity of time. I'll just take a minute. In fact, I was talking to Mr. Uday Singh, and we were talking about this, that when we talk about sustainability, we refer so many world conventions, we never refer towards our scriptures. If you read our scriptures, it says as to how we can serve we can save this earth. In Gita, God says, Aham sarvasya prabhavo matah sarvam pravartate. From me originates everything, and everything comes back to me. If you read Ishavashopanishad, it starts from this slok, Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate. I am the complete. Everything goes out of me and comes back to me, and I remain complete. When we talk about sustainability, it is nothing but this, that when we start respecting the earth, start respecting the water, start respecting the environment, it respects us. We have learned this. Chitijal Pavak, Gagan Samira, Tulsidas has said this. We don't require any international knowledge on this. Chitijal Pavak, Gagan Samira, and entire environment, entire SDG works around this. Are we polluting that? So the cost of development, cost of production by which there is a disaster, chemical disaster, cost of development that leads to emission, cost of unreasonable development leads to chaos, has to be contained by us if we really want to save this. Thank you.
Thank you. We will get back to you also for another intervention. So very rightly pointed out about the scripture and the sustainability, and you mentioned very pertinent point in terms of that preparedness. That paradigm must shift to response to the preparedness. And we know that response has been always very visible, and risk reduction and preparedness is always invisible. So the challenge is to see that how making invisible visible. That is the biggest challenge, what you have said. Deepak Singh, you are representing World Bank, and you have been saying that how India is progressing and what are the experiences of other countries. How that international cooperation can brought in, as Mr. Gopal Chaudhary also mentioned, that about the Gita and the slokas. And we also have a tradition of Kautilya Shastra, which talks about very beautifully how the fire can be managed. So this is a good treatise on disaster management in the Kautilya Shastra. So seeing that is a global experience, how do you see that in India, and what are the things in the governance of disaster risk reduction can move ahead? Yeah. First 5 minutes of your intervention, and then I will go, and then second round I will have.
Thank you, Dr. Santosh. Good to be here, and thanks to the organizers for having me. I think if we look at the way the disaster management systems and paradigm has evolved, and I think in the beginning you touched upon it. By saying that the initial phase was relief centric. Then we started to get into the recovery aspects, and I think over a period of time we have now understood that what's most important is the risk mitigation part, which deals with preparedness, which deals with capacity building. I think if we look at the framework that has developed along over the years in India and also internationally, with the coming up of the National Disaster Management Agency and the Act which created the NDMA, which created the state level disaster management agencies and also the district level disaster management agencies, we've got quite far in terms of upgrading our response capacities, but I am not too sure that if we have actually come that far in risk mitigation, particularly the risk reduction aspects, where we systematically look at areas, understand what the risk is, and design our own systems, infrastructure, whether be it water supply system, electrical system, sewerage system, transportation system, so on and so forth, in a manner that we build resilience and we build what the private sector would call it business continuity aspects. And again, I want to bring in the discussion on the private sector also here, because private sector is the backbone of the economy, and if the private sector stops, so many things stop. That's also true with the government. The public sector is also into the core sectors of economy, be it railways, the roadways, the electrical system, the air transport system, so on and so forth. And therefore, not building resilience in those systems costs us a lot. And we have seen examples after examples after example. Let me just take you back a little bit. We saw what happened in Chennai. And similar events are now happening in certain other parts of Tamil Nadu. After the last round of floods in Chennai made a lot of investments, including some of the investments with the help of the World Bank, in improving its drainage system. Assuming and understanding that once you improve your drainage system, the kind of flooding that's happening will be taken care of. The problem though is that we are yet to make the connections of climate change and disaster. Most of the disasters are now actually happening because of the impacts of climate change. The amount of rainfall that one of the taluk in Chennai 2 days back, in Tamil Nadu 2 days back had in 24 hours is 900 odd mm. It's like 1 meter of rainfall in 24 hours, in one day. There are no standards to deal with this. Whatever best standards we have evolved so far will fail to meet the requirement of draining the city or an area if there is 900 plus mm rainfall in 24 hours. So this is one major issue, and I think both government, private sector, international agencies have to deal with it, is that how do we make this connection of climate and disaster and try to prepare ourselves for that. Because this kind of freak events are now going to happen, and that's what the history is suggesting. Look at the history of cyclones on the west coast. We used to have maybe 1 in 10 years, now we are having almost 1 every year. The pattern, the way cyclone used to behave has changed. Earlier the cyclone used to cross into inland, now the cyclones are skirting along the coast and impacting 500 kilometers of coast in one go. We saw that recently again in Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh. So the kind of gains that we made in the governance of disaster management, I think we also now have to make those take similar strides in the management of the climate change impacts. And when we put that together, the problem is not 1 plus 1, it's going to become 11 or 111. And that's the magnitude of the problem. And that brings another thing, another aspect into the fore is, where is the money, where is the wherewithal available to deal with this kind of situation? Can we continue to rely on the traditional sources of financing, which is in this case, which typically in our jargon we'll call the adaptation efforts, has been coming from public sector, will continue to come from public sector. It is very different than than in what is there in the field of mitigation, which is if you want to install a solar power plant, there are business models. You go into the market, government can float a tender, you buy, you make a power purchase agreement, somebody will come, put its money, and the plant will be up and running. Your problem of electricity is resolved, you're on to clean energy, and you'll be reducing carbon emissions, so on and so forth. So these models in mitigations are already there, but as far as the adaptation is concerned, it's not there. How can we engage with private sector in doing urban drainage, in doing water supply and sanitation, the core functions or the core amenities that a city delivers? How can we bring in private sector into that? Because it's practically impossible that the public sector will be able to deal with it. And that's one area where I think an effective collaboration with private sector is not only that the need of the hour, it is a must now. We just cannot do only with public sector money. And if you have recently followed the World Bank, the new president of the World Bank, who comes from India, his pitch is, let's mobilize private capital. If the public sector invests $1, can we get $10 on that from the private sector? Can we get $5? Can we get $3 or $2? Whatever the delta is. If we can get those money, and this is, I think, will be, I'll take this discussion forward as to how to do this. There are some emerging ideas. There is a whole, emergence of climate finance, some concessional finance blended with the traditional public finance and commercial finance can help resolve these issues. So I think we look at it this way, that this is where the international cooperation is now going to happen as to how to get this money to deal with this problem. See, the next part will be the technical aspect, and I think on technical cooperation, capacity building, we have all started to work on that. There is collaboration on technical side between countries in the world on the side of training and capacity building. There are already a lot of activities happening, but now how do we get this money and deploy that money to deal with this twin problem of disaster and climate and them coming together? So that's where let me stop for now, and then we can take the discussion forward. Thanks.
Thank you very much. By highlighting this mobilization of financial resources. Mobilization of financial resources also as one of the critical part of the governance of disaster risk management. And saying that how to mobilize private capital for the social good or the public good. And then we can see this, that the World Bank is investing a lot of money in different development sector, both as a kind of a TA and also for the investment. And there he sees that the role of private sector, and Mr. Gopal Chaudhary highlighted about like situation if emerging, like IISSM is going for a capacity development initiative, how that international cooperation or the South-South cooperation or the North-South cooperation can build in. Sanjay, I would ask you a question in terms of, you have a presentation. So how long it will? 5 minutes? 5 to 0. Okay. So you go ahead with your presentation, and the second round we will have the question from how to do it. So,
No. Presentation from here. You just.
Colonel Sanjay, they will do that presentation.
At the very outset, I would like to thank IISSM for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to be at this platform. In particular, Mr. R.K. Sinha and Colonel Sain, who invited me. Coming to the topic proper, I agree with Mr. Gopal Chaudhary. The key lies in your preparedness. If you see the way India is facing the challenges, we need observation systems, proper analysis. Our organization, Climate Resilient Observing System Promotion Council, basically is supported by Ministry of Earth Science and Space, and we simplify the scientific knowledge with a community-focused approach. We in our country is known more for lightning, but we have also commissioned early warning systems at Chamoli now, and we are on emergency operations center setting up. Slide, please. So time has come. The technology provides you every knowledge which you can use for your preparedness. Today we are monitoring monsoon, we are monitoring the carbon credits. It is time you can set it up at your own factory or corporate premises or your security company premises. I'm showcasing you what is here. We have point weather system which is available. You can set up. The India Meteorological Department gives you those accesses. We have hazard resilient infrastructures which you can set up. This is the school of the Honorable President of India. We have stadium, we have airports which we have created. So it's a knowledge which can be taken and you can make your premises as hazard premise. This is a Baba Dham, Jharkhand, which is a lightning safe city, only one in India. So it can be set up anywhere else. In fact, Mr. Gopal Chaudhary, the way he trained Tata guys, they became an asset to the Jharkhand government. I, as an advisor, whenever I needed a diver, his Mazrul Bari and team always were there to save life. So we need to have preparedness. And I must emphasize, disaster management is everybody's business. It has to be a collective effort, and we have a magazine called No Disasters. Anil Sinha sir will be here tomorrow. He will be speaking about it. But we need to have a behavioral and cultural change amongst us. This education has to be imparted in school, colleges, your industry. In fact, in Jharkhand, if you don't have 9 skills, you will not be allowed to appear in class 10th exam. Now, as far as the vulnerability index is concerned, India stands at point number 2 in the world. And we are going to face more such extremities. We are a monsoon country, and I always say our dream of $10 trillion economy is possible, provided, I underline, there is no earthquake in northern India. This is the climate report of this year. Out of the 273 days, every day there was a disaster. We had more than 3,000 lives lost, more than 1 lakh cattle, and almost 2 billion hectare crop loss. You can see the life loss. Madhya Pradesh still tops. You can see number of days. 186 days were lightning days. Lightning is a disaster which is most emerging disaster due to the climate change. We need to be futuristic in our thinking. This cyclone Michong, we had tornado in Godavari district, which India never saw. So our thinking and planning for disaster has to be futuristic, and preparedness has to be accordingly done. If you see these losses, 30th May this year, Gurugram, one-day thunderstorm, 3,000 flights diverted, economic loss 800 crore. Similarly, Bangalore flood, Chennai, what is happening now, I have showcased here. It's important that you should know the weather services which are available. We have the comprehensive weather services from Indian Early Warning System, radar, satellite, automatic weather stations, and they are available on IMD website and NRSC. Kindly log on to these websites, use it, they are very, very useful. And we have apps which are giving you the complete information and what action you are supposed to take. These are the web links which I am giving you. Please use them, set up these things in your company or the industry premises. This is a Damini Lightning Alert app. This is Meghdun app for farmers, which season, which crop you should go and what threat you have. Similarly, we have a communication for dissemination system, and NDMA has already commissioned Sachet. And I must caution, the way weather expertise is being gained by our adversaries, weather warfare is next warfare we are going to get. Countries have developed capability to make sudden lightning, flash flood, and we are likely to face it. Business continuity. I must tell, you must download Sachet. This is the latest app from NDMA. And this is dissemination system, cap up to the last mile. And this is 112. In fact, my takeaway from my presentation will be all who are attending today must download this 112 India app. And this gives you response within 5 minutes. All ambulances, PCR van, fire, everything is at one-stop solution. Please use this. We have our own Maple. Instead of Google, use Maple. All those who have fought Kargil war, you know what happened with us. Similarly, we have unified payment interface, logistic interface, and we have ESG norms. ESG, it's very important what companies are doing. I see the report, but it is not mainstreamed still. There's a lot to be done at the company level in consonance with the SDGs, IPCC, and the SFDRR. Post-COVID, healthcare has become something very important which we are not paying attention. We have health ATMs as part of our Digital India mission, creating your Aadhaar ID, loading your parameters, giving you online consultation by the doctors, giving you insurance, and giving you a comprehensive risk coverage from your health. And climate resilience is most important. Prior to Dubai, whatever was India journey, we are still progressive in the world. We have included it in G20, but we need to follow it more. For industry especially, move beyond carbon credit, come to the green credit. We have the LEAD IT initiative. Please adopt LEAD IT initiative. We have climate resilient health mission. We have climate resilient food mission. Please adopt to those missions. And climate finance. Yesterday you saw Britain was being asked by a third world country, the loss and damage fund. Here I demand loss and damage fund from local victim, tribals and weaker section of India to the big mining industries, metal industries. The losses in Odisha, Bihar, Jharkhand are phenomenal. And the CSR fund which comes goes minimal to them. There is disaster, the district mineral fund is there, the money doesn't reach down the line. So it's important that these industries who are creating the pollution, who are causing the climate extremities, the eastern India especially has become a hot spot. The western economic corridor has become a hot spot. The companies should be made responsible to create similar green credits, similar LEAD IT initiatives, so that people, common people, poorer people are not victimized. And I must give the basic fundamentals of disaster management lies in the disaster continuum. The upper half shows the pre-disaster activities, that is prevention, capacity building, and mitigation. And the lower half gives you response rehabilitation. And based on this, we must have a disaster resilience framework. What Mr. Gopalji was saying, we must have proper risk assessment, early warning, knowledge imparted to people, capacity development, and mitigation. Fourth comes the response, where 112 and 108 we are not utilizing. We must utilize. And fifth is the relief, rehabilitation, reconstruction. So this is the disaster resilience framework, which I would like to give to everybody as a take-home message. This slide is the crux of my presentation, and if you use it, your industry is going to be resilient. There is a timeline for disaster. Please plan, have a disaster calendar, and have an individual action plan. I do not know how many of you in Delhi have the emergency bag at your home. We must create individual, family, society, and then only we can have a district or above level disaster management resilience plan. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, Colonel Sanjay, for very comprehensive presentation and focusing on the preparedness at all level, and that is the capacity building. So, like 15th Finance Commission in the governance when we are talking about, first time in the history of India that government has brought as a kind of a funding mechanism for pre-disaster preparedness, capacity building, long-term recovery and reconstruction. So overall, if you see the gamut of the governance of financing, 1,60,000 crores have been allocated, and out of that, 40% will go on response. But the 60% money is still left for preventing and preparing and for mitigating. So how we see this kind of that this availability of the fund is with the government. So how with the corporate social responsibility and also as a corporate taking initiative for disaster risk management, many parts of the world, there are many private organizations working. So I see that how IISSM, just Gopal Chaudhary, I'm addressing you this question, what Mr. Deepak says a way ahead. How do you see as a kind of a way ahead as an IISSM, disaster risk management planning and going for capacity building?
Thank you, Professor Santosh. So when we talk about preparedness, as Colonel Sanjay has just shown, response and rehabilitation are the fourth and fifth aspect of disaster management continuum. Now issue is that who prepares the corporate, who prepares the district. So if you see the structure of NDMA, SDMA and DDMA, Prime Minister being the chairperson of NDMA, Chief Minister being the chairperson of SDMA, and District Collector being the chairperson of DDMA. These three bodies have been made as the bodies that would plan, mitigate and do all the five aspects of this. And why Prime Minister and why Chief Minister and why District Collector? Because these are the three most powerful people, most powerful position in this country, DM, CM and PM, where everything merges. When Prime Minister is the chairperson, all ministries will support. When Chief Minister is the chairperson, all departments will support. When Collector is the chairperson, all departments will facilitate. And this is the thought. So we talk about first preparedness and how organization like IISSM can help. IISSM can help by pulling in the experts in this field, people like Professor Santosh and all those who have dedicated their entire life on this field. We can pull in those people here, capacity of state, district and corporation and community. So what happened in Bhopal? Why so many people were killed in Bhopal? Because they were not aware about what to do in case there is a gas leakage from the Union Carbide factory. So this disaster management preparedness plan talks about off-site drill and on-site drill. If you read the disaster management plan, it makes the corporation or the industry or the factory responsible to manage on-site incidents. They have to inform the collector. But when it is the off-site, means when things have gone out of the factory and started affecting the community, it is not the factory manager or a factory occupier who is held accountable to manage that. He is held accountable for, for the lapses. But management responsibility lies with the district collector. Now, how many district collectors are there who understands this well, barring those districts where you have the disaster very often? So this is where IISSM can play a role. This pool of resources, people, IISSM can also pull in resources and can help the industry carry out review of its disaster management plan. Disaster management plan can further be converted into mock drills. Audit can find out the lapses or the shortcomings in the disaster management plan, and this alone would help in achieving the first three goals. First, what exactly is the plan? Second, what exactly are the early warning indicators that would make me start invoking my mitigation plan? And third is how to coordinate with everybody. I tell you one small example. When we for the first time carried out an off-site mock drill in Jamshedpur with the help of NDRF and the district and the state, we realized that from where do we get 100 ambulances? If 500 people are impacted by the gas or 1,000 people are impacted by the gas, which hospital do we take them? How do we take them? What about the traffic? How do I inform 10,000 communities all around the plant? These were the questions that came out during the mock drill. And then thereafter, various plans were made. Mutual support plans were made that entire industry will pool in their resources, ambulances, doctors, and will send to that particular place. Who organizes that? SDMA. So this is where IISSM is going to play a big role in days to come. It has to provide the answer to the problem, not only discuss about the problem. And I would urge the IISSM to take note of this, that this is the requirement of the nation, state, district, institution, and corporates.
Thank you very much for giving assurance to the people who are here sitting and also those who are listening online to you, that IISM is giving a kind of a promise to the people that it will help in building capacity. What Mr. Colonel Sanjay has mentioned about pre and all the phases of disaster, and by citing example, that how you are going to take up and how IISM is going to get geared up. Maybe that would be, it's a very good assurance. Now coming to again to the World Bank, Deepak, you see this, that lot of that investment now government is also making. Government has promised also and allocated large number of resources to put up for the capacity building and for the disaster risk management. So how do you see as a World Bank, like we were doing damage and loss assessment in many of the states, and we found 13,000 crore, 14,000 crore, 16,000 crores, that's lost have been estimated from the social sector, from the government sector. But coming to the private sector is also going to be a huge amount. So in the current scenario of capacity development, which we are talking as a solution, how solution where the World Bank can pitch in and can support initiatives with the government and outside the government also. As a solution, how to go about it.
Thank you, Santosh. Unfortunately, I will not give any assurances. Let me give you some ideas. Let me try and put certain things in perspective through an example. So we have a project in Kerala, and as I was talking about, the governance system of disaster management, as per the act, it actually starts at the, stops at the district. So you have a national level disaster management agency, then you have a state level, and then you have a district level. Of course, it's the job of the district level disaster management agency to deal with all the issues in the district. But we know that, some of the Indian districts are large, it may be highly populated, and therefore, of course, everything comes and merges with the district collector, but district collector has like 1 million problems to deal with on everyday basis, and therefore it's probably not possible for him or her to be as sensitive to these matters as he or she should be. And therefore, the idea came that let's go at the level of the village. Let's go at the last level of the governance, which is the Gram Panchayat. So I think what Kerala wanted to do, and then we got associated with Kerala, is that we created the disaster management plans for each Gram Panchayat. Step 1. Step 2, for each Gram Panchayat, the climate information was brought in and integrated into the disaster management plans. Then step 3, based on this integrated disaster and climate plan, every Gram Panchayat does a forward planning for 1 year and prepares an investment plan. And the next step is that these investment plans are then assessed through some identified parameters to understand how close they are to dealing with the issues of disaster and climate, and a score is provided on that. Once that baseline is established, as these years progress, as these Gram Panchayats progress into this process, if they increase their score, there is an incentive attached to that. So we are trying to say that you are bringing knowledge, you are building capacity, and then you are providing incentive, and then there is a framework for monitoring and evaluation so that it feeds into the entire cycle and the whole cycle keeps going on. So this is a model that is being kind of experimented and developed in Kerala. Now, if this is how we want to deal with this, I mean, the endeavors of IISM and likes probably will again, need a lot of strengthening, because we now need disaster and climate professionals at the Gram Panchayat levels. So the building capacity now has to start from the bottom. It's not at the level of the NDMA, that NDMA creates 10 master trainers and those 10 master trainers go and then create another 100 master trainers, and those 100 master trainers then do this 10,000 or 15,000. We're talking about every Gram Panchayat. And that's where because the impacts are local, the response and the risk mitigation planning also has to be local. And that's how, it's a bottom-up approach that is being followed. So hopefully, if we kind of progress and be successful in this is a model that can be scaled up, and this will open up huge requirements on capacity building side, and also huge requirements on the requirement of access to finance, which is the point that I brought first. Very quickly, I want to come to the other point that I raised initially. How do we, leverage from the private sector? I think there's this presentation on this, on this lot of this weather services. So that's certainly an area that, the private sector can look into. Early warning is certainly an area that private sector can look into, because I think Mr. Pillai earlier, who was here, was talking about Swiggy. Now Swiggy needs to know which areas will get underwater, so that they can inform their customer that I may not be able to come to you, beyond 3 p.m. And they can also reroute their riders to ensure that they don't get stuck. So one of the things that we were following on this Chennai, crisis, when you tell people that it's going to rain, what does it mean for us? What does it mean for you? Does it mean that you will not go out on that day? Maybe yes. Beyond that? But if I can tell you that there is likely that there will be 2 meter water in front of your house, then my alarm bells ring. So what happens to my TV? What happens to my car? What happens to my gas? What happens to my electricity? And then I will demand. So where is the response? Now what is the response? The response has to be based on a forecast of not weather, but on the forecast of impact. So providing impact forecast is one huge area where private sector can come in. And this is a service, just like you are selling, just like the private sector is selling service on weather, they can also start selling services on impact. There are huge, benefits of that, and there is a huge kind of use case for that. So these are some of the ideas. I think we can have a lot of discussion on this.
Thank you very much, Deepak. We have got the warning signal from the organizer. Would you like to say a last punch? Just quick, very quick.
I have two important points which we need to consider. Disaster is dynamic now and is going to be more extreme. So a special request from big corporates and the academia. We need to have research and development locally taking place, identifying the risk. So this is one of the requests or appeal from the private sector and the academia. Ma'am was here. In fact, Bihar, we were carrying out a study on mortality due to lightning, and hardly academic institutions came for support. So we need IIT Patna is there, but we need a collective effort with large number of institutions. Secondly, risk transfer mechanism. In our Indian paradigm, this risk transfer mechanism is still yet to take off. So private sector can play a big role. I can assure you, we have two big melas where I am, as their technical expert. Ganga Sagar Mela and this Devghar, Baba Dham. The private sector gives the complete insurance cover. So anything happening, they cover it and they make profit also out of it. So it has to be done. Surajkund Mela last year started up 2 rupees per ticket. So that way, risk transfer should be also considered as part of
it. Thank you very much. Risk transfer mechanism. Just to inform the House, the Government of India has already submitted a proposal on that to the government, the working group, which I led the process, and it is with the Government of India and it is maybe considering. But thank you all the panelists. 5 quick points which I would like to summarize what have come up. One is the creation of disaster hotspots and risk assessment. That is to be done where the private sector can pitch in and play a very important role. The second is that develop response, recovery and supply chain management plan. That one, how that companies are gearing up with the dynamic disaster modeling in terms of the challenges which we face. Third is that engage with the suppliers and the practice consistent supply chain management. How to go with this. Then constantly review risk exposure because it's a changing and dynamic. So that's and also it's important to understand the damage and loss, and that should be taken into a consideration in terms of disaster which is happening. The local level capacity building, it starts from the bottom up, not from the top down alone. And also that IISM is ready to gear up in terms of taking that capacity building program along with the other government and other private or social sector institutions. And last but not the least, the resource mobilization is a challenge, but just to support that resource is there. The idea is to capitalize those resources, and the need would actually provide those resources. So I would request all the delegates to give a big hand and big applause to all the panelists. So thank you very much to all of you. But I am sorry and my sincere apology because of the constraint of time. I could not give this opportunity to the audience to ask a question. But I'm sure that next panel would give this kind of an opportunity. Thank you once again. Thank you.
We thank our learned panel who bring with them years of experience for elaborating